Hello everyone and welcome to episode 53 of Twitch Tales. Where did we leave off in episode 52? Oh dear. Well, as the name suggested of that episode, we began with an undead deer charging down at us in the woods. A pretty clear sign that we were not too far from the necromancer whom we sought. The deer charged at us and thankfully missed with its first attack. It spun back round, ready to kick us with the hooves, and thinking fast, we whipped out the rope of commanding and tried to entangle the deer. It wrapped up the front legs of this deer and restrained it. But as we dodged around to its side and the deer tried to take another restrained attack at us, we heard fluttering in the trees as bats, green dragon bats, came flying towards us. A small flock. I'm not sure if that's the collective noun for bats, but a small flock of bats came fluttering towards us, ignoring the deer entirely, although they could quite clearly see that it was there. But they were ignoring it as they attacked us instead. We misty stepped up onto the top of the tree, hoping that the bats and deer would fight one another, but it seemed, alas, they did not. They came for us, so we stuck out in this tree as the deer attacked it and started to tear down this rotting tree, and we had to misty step down to the ground again and run away from the bats. They gave chase for quite some time, biting and nipping at us, clawing and scratching, until the deer killed a few of them. And even despite them being attacked by the deer, they were still showing no signs of aggression towards the deer in return, choosing instead to attack you. Once you'd run far enough away from where you were, though, they stopped and turned and flew off in a particular direction. Once you were sufficiently hidden from the deer, it stopped its aggression on you and just went back to a shambling, meandering, undead path. Deciding what to do, you decided to spend some time tracking that deer, seeing if it would lead you back to where the necromancer was. But after an hour or so of tracking, you realised the deer was simply meandering aimlessly, wandering, attracted by the sounds of the forest. Any birds or rodents or insects that it came across, it would aggressively trample and charge until they'd either left its range or it had killed them. Deciding eventually that you were wasting your time following this undead deer, you decided instead to try and follow the direction of where the bats flew off to. So you did so. You went back to roughly where you'd been during the fight, and turned in the direction the bats flew and started walking that way. After quite some time, you came across other signs of undead creatures: an undead snake, an undead badger. I can't remember exactly what undead animals you came across, but they were set dressing. So you came across some undead animals, until eventually you came across a creature that was bipedal as it walked through the forest. And as it emerged, you saw a humanoid in a dark hooded cloak who told you that you were unsafe being here and you should leave. You got into a conversation with this old chap who continued to warn you that you were unsafe and you should leave. You asked for his help, and he told you that while he wishes he could help, he can't. You persisted, and he got more angry. Told you to leave. You persisted some more, and he got angrier. You asked him if he was cursed, and he screamed at you to get out, and then attacked. And as he pushed you to the floor with strength greater than his physical form should allow, you saw his face up close, and you smelled his stench. It was the smell of someone who has not washed for many months. It was the face of someone who has not slept for weeks. He was clearly ill in many ways. But he managed to contain himself enough to stand up off of you and start to walk away. And you finally took the hint to leave. So you got up and left. You made your way back to the dome, the treasure dome of Luciferique, being sure to take a dead green dragon bat with you as you went. And when you arrived at the treasure dome, just as night was falling, the doorway opened and you found, down on the ground level, all of the denizens of this treasure room standing around, standing at attention, as Lord Luciferique himself, the green dragon, down on ground floor, was announcing to them all that Charlie, the half-elf druid whom he had captured a few days before, had made his choice not to live in this dome anymore, and instead was to be the hunted. He gave the word to one of his green dragonborn allies, and Inola brought you a bow and handed you one of your arrows. Zakar, another green dragonborn, brought Charlie to the centre, placed an apple on his head, and from around 80 or so feet away, you were told to begin the ceremony. Lord Luciferique, using his abilities with wordlessly commanding the plants around him, opened doorways in every direction of this dome, and then stood back. As the other green dragonborn all stood back as well, giving many feet between you and the target. You have an arrow in your hand, you have a bow in your hand, you have a dragon, 3 green dragonborn, and about a dozen captives standing around you. Apis, what would you like to do? We can pray to Ultimas, distract Luciferique with the dead bat, shoot the apple, draw back the arrow while aiming at the apple, and as you do so warn Charlie to stay away from the undead area, hoping he'll get the hint. Here's my direction dice. There it is. I've got a D8 that's all the different cardinal directions. Can we bring out the bat at roughly the same time we shoot the apple to use the bat as a distraction? Do you know how bow and arrow works, Felagund? Roughly the same time. Which one are you doing first? Because you're going to need both hands to shoot the arrow. Can we look at Charlie and try and understand how what he wants us to do? A kind of insight check on his feelings. Sure thing. Let's do an insight check on Charlie as he's standing there in the centre of the town. That is a 9. A 9 plus your insight modifier, which is a +2, so 11. With an 11, it is relatively dark in here. You do have dark vision, but you are about 80 feet away, so it is a little too dim for you to be able to make out great detail. It makes the attack a little bit more difficult, the aim a little bit more difficult. This size target from this range, with you being such a great archer, you're fairly confident you could hit it with pretty good consistency if it was just the target on a tree, for instance. But with the added dangers of failure, it adds a little difficulty to the situation. To give you the information that you need as players. This is not character information, but this is player information, just so that you can make an informed choice and you don't think that I am forcing something to happen that you would rather not happen. To lay all my cards on the table, as it were. If you roll an attack roll on the apple, and you get less than a 10 total, Charlie dies. You hit him square in the face and he dies. If you make an attack roll on the apple and you get a 10 to 14 total, you hit Charlie and it's an automatic critical hit. You glance him across the side of the temple and it cuts into his head, but doesn't outright kill him. If you roll a 15 to a 17, you will hit him, but it'll just be a regular hit. Maybe you hit him in the shoulder or the neck or something. Not like in the throat, but like cut the neck or something. If you get an 18 or a 19, you will miss Charlie and you'll miss the apple. If you get a 20 plus, you will hit the apple. And to be super clear, Apis, you have a +8 modifier to your attack rolls. So with your attack roll, you'll get a +8. That means that you will kill Charlie outright if you get a nat 1. If you get a 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6, you will crit Charlie. If you get a 7, 8, 9, you'll hit him. If you get a 10 or 11, you will hit both Charlie and the apple. And if you get a 12 plus, you'll hit the apple. That's what I wanted you to know before you make your decision, so that you don't feel like I'm forcing you to kill an NPC. So, not that Apis knows that. Well, Apis kind of knows that, because they don't know it in terms of mechanics and numbers, of course, but they don't know it in terms of mechanics and numbers, but they know their own ability with an arrow. They know that the benefit is that because of the dome, there's no wind in here, but the drawback is because you're 80 feet away and your dark vision's like 60 feet, it's relatively dim light that Charlie's standing in, and only lit by like the flickering of flames, torches and things around the place. So difficult. So you know that it's a difficult shot. You know that you can hit it on a 12 plus. So you know that you will hit this shot about 45% of the time, and you'll miss the shot another like 10% of the time. And you know that you can err on the side of missing him. You can err on the side of missing Charlie, but then the chance of actually hitting the apple goes way up. The chance of killing Charlie goes goes down though. But you don't know necessarily what it means to Lucifreak if you miss the apple, because Lucifreak, just to remind the people who were here before and to tell anybody who wasn't here before, Lucifreak has seen directly you kill a bird about the size of a wren. For those who don't know, it's a British bird that's about this big. You have killed a wren as it flew through the sky in circles. So you've picked out a moving target of a wren this size and you killed it with an arrow. So Lucifreak knows you are very good with a bow and arrow. So if you miss this apple, there's a chance that Lucifreak will read into that, even if you just missed him genuinely by accident. From where the Dragonborn are standing to Bread Tom, it would be impossible for you to hit them by mistake. They are basically at thirds of the dome. One is pretty much next to you. I'm pretty sure it was Enola that handed you one of the arrows. She's standing about 10 feet from you, to your right. The other two are sort of round 60 degrees 120 degrees in both directions from you, and so hitting them would be a significant diversion from where Charlie is. So what's everybody thinking? Zephyr Strike? Does Zephyr add a plus to hit? Zephyr gives you advantage on hit. So if you wanted to use your Zephyr Strike, you can see it down in your spells there. You have 2 spell slots left for the day. If you wanted to cast Zephyr Strike on yourself before you make this shot, then you can see in the chat there, you can move like the wind, and until the spell ends, your movement doesn't provoke opportunity attacks. Once before that spell ends, you can choose to give yourself advantage on one attack roll, and that attack deals extra damage if it hits. So the benefits, the cost and reward of casting Zephyr Strike is it takes up a spell slot, of course, but the benefit is you get advantage on the roll. But the drawback is, if with advantage you still hit, you will do the extra force damage. So if you are really unlucky and with an advantage you get a 3, you will crit Charlie and you'll do the extra force damage. But you got to weigh up what's the chances of getting less than a 12 with advantage. Can we pray to Ultimes? Yes, you can, but that's just a stalling technique. I need to know what you're doing. What are you trying to do in this moment? What would be the goal of praying to Ultimes? Are you doing so to try and get some sort of a benefit on the roll, or we move diagonally before we shoot to be between Charlie and the dragon? To be between Charlie and the dragon, so you want to put yourself between Charlie and the dragon. The dragon is kind of, I'd say you could. It would be noticeable. From where the dragon is, he is kind of between Enola and Pakrish, off to your right. And he is kind of direct line between them, so he's a little closer to Charlie than the others. Can we ask the dragon to be clearer about what he wants us to do? Does he want us to hit the apple or Charlie? Start the hunt is not clear enough. Okay, yeah, I think that makes sense that Apis would do that. You say you sort of got your bow and arrow, and you look to Luciferic and say, Lord Luciferic, can I just be clearer? You want me to hit the apple or him? Start the hunt. I haven't been here for one of these hunts. And Luciferic looks at you and smiles. Oh, but of course. What was I thinking? You haven't had the benefit of witnessing one of these hunts. Charlie has. What I want from you is to utilize that skill that you've shown me before. Take the apple from his head, for Charlie is not allowed to move a muscle until it is gone. But the second it is, he must run, because the game is on. If he can make it to the edge of the dome, he must survive outside before we find him. If we find him before dawn, well, the game is over. But if he can survive until sunrise, then he wins his freedom. So strike the apple from his head, and that will indicate to Charlie the moment he's allowed to move. Essentially, you're using a starter gun. Only you're aiming a starter gun at one of the runner's heads, and it's loaded. That's the situation you're in. He does not want you to kill Charlie or hit him, but he's also obviously okay with that being a possibility, otherwise he wouldn't have put this situation into effect. Probabilities of a 12 with advantage. Can you give me 5 minutes? It's not that hard to work out, Maneses. The probability of not getting a 12 is 11 out of 20. And the chances of getting that on 2 dice is 11 out of 20 twice. So 121 in 400 chance of missing still. So when he said use the ability he saw his use, he's talking about Misty Step? No, he's talking about the ability to hit a moving target. You've hit something smaller than an apple that was flying around in the air above you. So he feels like you should be capable of hitting this apple now. Alright, we're gonna need to put something to a poll here to try and get some decisions from somebody. Do we want to shoot any of the bad guys? You've got a green dragon, 3 dragonborn. You have no inspiration, no lucky horseshoe, no rerolls, no second level spell slots, and only 2 level 1 spell slots. You're on 45 out of 56 maximum hit points. In terms of allies, you have Charlie, who looks like he's taken a couple of fists to the face. He's a little bit bruised. You've got the other fellow captives. It would be a very dangerous situation to shoot one of the bad guys, but I'm not the one making the decision, you guys are. Alright, with 85% of the vote, Apis, there's a 15% of Apis's mind thinks about shooting one of the bad guys, but looking around, they all look relatively trained for combat. It looks like they would probably be able to tank at least one hit without dying. and that's just the Dragonborn, of course, the dragon would. And so you think about it briefly, but the overwhelming majority of Apis' mind decides, no, we're not going to shoot one of these guys in this current situation. Maybe there'll be time for that later. So, next decision to make is: do we try to stall, or how would we try to stall? Is the question. How would we try to stall if we stall? Talk about the necromancer, talk about undead, ask clarifying questions about the hunt, pray to Altamez, or refuse. All right. So with 49% of the vote, if we stall, we're going to do so by asking Luciferic about the undead, or talking about the fact that we were just attacked by undead. Do we shoot or stall? That's the next question. All right. With 64% of the vote, Apis decides that stall tactics may not work. Telling the dragon right now about the undead may not be useful. It may just anger him, or come across as obvious that we're trying to stall, and therefore lose what we're trying to build with Luciferic, that we are a loyal subject of his and not actively undermining him when we get the chance. So Apis decides to shoot. You pull back the arrow, and as you pull back the arrow, are we casting Zephyr Strike? 9% chance by the looks of it that you crit Charlie with the added d8 force damage. There's also extra chance on top of that you also hit him with the extra damage, but won't crit. With 82% of the vote, we cast Zephyr Strike. With one of our 2 remaining spell slots, taking us down to only 1 spell slot left. We pray to Altamez silently to ourselves, please guide my arrow true. And we feel Altamez's blessing in the form of the spell. We use the advantage that Zephyr Strike gives us, and we roll an attack. We roll an attack on Charlie. Or rather, on the apple on top of Charlie. Now, what am I going to do here? Do I want to just roll and... Now let's just show it off the whole time. I was thinking about turning my dice cam off for a second just to sort of describe it before I reveal it. But it's you guys that are rolling, so you guys get to see what you're rolling right from the start. With a 9 or a 13. The 13, with advantage, plus 8 from your attack roll, takes you to a 21. You focus. You feel the lack of breeze under the trees. You watch for a second as the flickering of light from the nearby oil lanterns flickers once and twice and thrice. You get the pattern of the flickering. You close one eye and the other, get that parallax. Judge the distance. You look down at the arrow that you've been presented with and check out the straightness of it, check out the fletching. You take all of this into account like the master bowsmith that you are. You take aim and loose. The arrow sails through the air. Charlie closes his eyes, a look of neutral contentment on his face. He breathes in deeply, right as the arrow strikes through the apple on his head. And the very instant that it does, his eyes open, and before the apple hits the ground, he spins on his feet and starts to swing his leg out in a large arc around the dirt on which he's standing. With his held action, he casts Longstrider on himself, kicking the dirt around himself, and the dirt seems to bulge and almost follow his foot as it pushes himself along. And then, as though the dirt is presenting itself into a starting block, he pushes off of it and trails some of that dirt up his legs and into himself, imbuing himself with extra speed. I'm going to roll a direction dice to see which direction he sets off in. You came from the undead. You are directly west. So you're west. I'm going to say that the dragon is sort of southwest. Pakrish is sort of southeast, and Zakar is sort of northeast-ish. Obviously he's not going to run directly at the dragon or anything, but so I'll re-roll if that happens, but I just want to know which direction he's running randomly. West. West is towards you. So as you shoot the arrow, he spins his leg out, casts Long Strider, the ground makes itself a starting block, and he takes off. As soon as he starts running, the other Dragonborn ready with their respective weapons. Pakrish holding a... what does he hold again? He fights with a shield and spear. Enola fights with a pike. Zakar fights with a javelin, and all three of them start moving in towards him. This is an initiative order situation, not necessarily a combat, more of a chase, but it will help me to know who goes first and all of that stuff if we're in an initiative order. So I will have you roll initiative. You've got a +3 dexterity, so a +3 to your initiative, which is a 14. 14 is enough to actually go first because I pre-rolled them. That's just for we're not actually fighting this guy, but I thought it was a fun little backdrop for the... Hey, get out of the way. Fun little backdrop for this fight, you staring down the green dragon. We're not going to be worrying about the battle map so much as just the initiative tracker and your spell tracker and things. So, putting you on the initiative tracker, I already pre-rolled for everything, and you head in where I thought you might, because Charlie got a 10, and these three all got lower than a 10. And enemy here is the lair action that happens on initiative count 20. So, as Charlie sets off in basically your direction, he's going to be run past you, and I guess he's hoping that you're not going to attack him. The lair action will be, on the lair action turn, the lair action will be that the dragon stands back up on his hind legs and he roars, "Let the hunt begin!" And as he does so, he brings his wings up, and accompanying that motion of him bringing his wings up, you can hear the tearing and forming outside of various of these thick bramble hedge mazes that he's made the dome out of. He's forming himself a hedge maze outside. Apis, it is your turn. As he runs towards you with Long Strider active, he manages to clear only like 5 or 10 feet of the distance because initiative is on. What do we want to do? Do we want to Hunter's Mark Charlie so that we can hunt him down easier and hopefully get to him before the bad guys do? Do we want to bring out the Dragon Bat and now talk to Lucifric saying, "Hey, before you fly off anywhere and hunt this guy, I need to talk to you about what just happened to me," and try and distract and stall Lucifric? Do we want to run to the centre of town and reclaim our arrow that we just shot? Do we want to just leg it out of the dome and run away as well, using the opportunity to have Charlie and us both running so that our chances of one of us escaping goes up? Or do we want to run over to the weapons hut, which will quite clearly be seen as like some sort of a hostile action, but we might be able to play it off as like, "Hey, I need weapons for this hunt," right? He didn't tell us we need to hunt Charlie too, did he? He didn't. He didn't say that explicitly. Alright, with 47% of people saying weapons hut, we do not have a clear consensus. We have 47% wanting to run to the weapons hut, 40% wanting to run to get out the Dragon Bat. So we're going to redo that poll, and we're going to drop all other options and just put those two things up. Alright, with 2/3 of the vote, Apis decides Dragon Bat. So, firing the arrow off, seeing this happening, you reach down into your bag and you bring out the dead bat, and bringing it out, you shout, "Wait, this is getting out of hand. I still needed to talk to you about this." And you take the bat out and you throw it to Lucifreak's, towards Lucifreak. As he's just stood up to roar, the hunt begins. He looks down, sees the bat, and says, "Yes, I was going to talk to you about that. Don't worry, it can wait." Alright, that was your turn. On Charlie's turn, he's obviously taking the dash action. Luckily for him, he beat out all of the enemies on initiative, so he's already he's going to move 40 feet on his turn rather than 30 because of Longstrider. He's going to move another 40 with dash, and he's going to dart past you. He doesn't come within like 5 feet, but he goes like around you, like maybe like 10 feet wide, and he's dashing to the west. You do get movement spates, yes, well remembered. Where do you want to move on your turn? Towards the dragon? Towards Enola? Towards Charlie? Try and intercept Charlie as if you're trying to get in the way, but you... Oh, whoops, your action was to get out the dragon bat and throw it and be like, "Hey, look, this is the thing." Move towards the weapons shed. Some people did want that, so I'll say that that's kind of a good compromise. You kind of move in the direction of the weapons shed a little bit, not like running for it, not using your action to dash towards the weapons shed like you would have, but you move towards the weapons shed a bit. In that case, the dragon's response, instead of just, "We'll talk about that later," is, "Don't worry, we can talk about that later. Oh, Enola, Apis wants some weapons. Give him 3. Give them 3. And then Charlie uses their action to dash past you. They're about 20 feet now from the edge of the dome. They're still in the dome, but about 20 feet from the edge. Enemy number 3 was Pakrish. Pakrish and Zakar anyway. They were on the other side and running, so they're going to dash, but they're not going to be able to cover the ground as much. Actually, Zakar will not have to dash because he's got a throwable javelin, so he's going to launch it. So Zakar will use his action, his movement to dash to move towards where Charlie's running, and then his action is to launch the javelin. What's the range? So he's gone 80 feet. There was about 40 feet between, so about 30, 100, just over 100. So javelins are within, I think they're 30, 120 from memory. And so he's within his disadvantage range. With a 6 plus stuff, that's not enough to hit Charlie. As the javelin goes sailing past it, it lands about 10 to 20 feet short of Charlie's extra movement, and Charlie's just bucking it. Pakrish will use his turn to just action dash. He's going to get so he's covering the distance about 60 feet, and he's going to get to, he's about 60 feet behind Charlie now. Enemy number 2 is Enola, and she was using her action to her movement to get up to and intercept Charlie as he leaves, because she was kind of to the west/southwest ish. She can actually intercept him with her movement, but as she's running across you, and Charlie's coming round to the north side of you, and she's running across in front of you, the dragon shouts out to give you 3. So she kind of like pulls up a little as if she's going to going to question him, but thinks better of it. She reaches down into the bag beside her, essentially, and pulls out a small bundle of arrows, and she quickly takes 3 out and just throws them to your feet, stuffs the others back in her bag, and sets off running. So with her having to use her action to do that, she is no longer actually able to catch up to him. She's about 10 feet behind him. Oh, let me actually work this out, because if she is 10 feet behind him, Let's see, 80 feet, 60, some trigonometry in my head, 60, 80, 30, yeah, she actually gets to just 10 feet behind him. Alright, that was enemy number 2. Enemy number 1, needless to say who is number 1. The wings go out. He shouts, "Zakar! You stay here for this. Pakrish! You two. This time I'm taking Enola and Apis." And he takes off, and he just swoops down in your direction. He seems to be sort of flying somewhat leisurely. He doesn't seem to be boosting. If he wanted to, he could probably have covered that distance easily. He's like a cat toying with his prize, and killing him before he leaves the dome isn't any fun. He just kind of like flies over your direction, and then lands near you. You'll be coming with me. That is enemy number 1's turn. Back to the top of the round with a lair action. You hear more of these getting a little bit more distant as he's increasing the range of this this hedge maze that he's creating. Apis, it's your turn. What do we want to do? I think it's about time that we probably start making choices individually through Nightbot. So let's roll it. Behind the glamour. Behind the glamour, you are deciding what to do for Apis right now, in this particular moment, in this present moment. What do you want to do? Behind the glamour, you've got your movement, your action, your bonus action. You still have Zephyr Strike up, so you have disengageable abilities. What's his chops? Charlie is probably he's probably level with you pretty much, but about 10 feet to your north. About 10 feet behind him towards the centre of the village is Enola. And then like between you, kind of in a box shape actually, the 4 of you are about 10 feet apart from one another. Dragon over here, you down here, Charlie over here, and Enola up there. That's kind of the layout that we're looking at. So you have 1 spell slot left for Hunter's Mark. You have 3 arrows and a bow. I say take our weapon and arrows, get out ahead, try and find a vantage point to make it look like we're hunting for now. Awesome. Alright. So you pick up the arrows and you turn to Lucifreak and you say something along the lines of let the hunt begin indeed. And you turn and you run off outside trying to like cut him off. You run out of one of the west archway, the west hole. You take a knee and you're waiting just outside of the dome. As you run outside, you can recognise that there is still the vegetation path that's cleared between the forest and the dome. There is still that open area. That was kind of like a trench almost that was around the dome, but everywhere that the forest begins, you can see is now just completely covered by this bramble wall. You can see that there are various entrances in it. So you run outside and you take stance in one of those entrances and kind of like prepare yourself for Charlie to run out, and that's your turn. It is now Charlie's turn. He is going to continue to run. He leaves the 10-foot range of Enola, and because she has a pike, which is a reach weapon, he's leaving her melee range. She takes a strike out with her pike as he does. And she's going to roll for that. What is his stats? Thankfully that's a miss with a 2. So she takes a strike out at him with her pike, and the long strider dirt that seems to almost be pushing along under his feet. It's kind of like lifting and pushing him on every stride. He seems to be having these starting blocks, giving him an extra boost of movement. She takes a strike at him as he leaves her melee range, but then he can run 80 feet on his turn with a dash. So he leaves the dome with 20 feet of movement. He looks around, he sees you, he gives you a little wink, and then with 60 feet of movement left, he is going to veer off to the side. Is he going towards the north or the south? Let's have a look. Not the east, north or south? South. So he turns pretty sharply towards the south and heads past you. With 60 feet of movement, he can easily cover the distance between the dome and the hedge wall, and he disappears into the maze, essentially, in the entrance to your right. You have a readied action, and you wanted to make it look like you were waiting for him to come out. Do you want to loose an arrow in his direction and purposefully miss? What do you want to do? Or do you want to loose an arrow at him and actually try and hit him? To make it look really realistic that you were waiting for him. I'm just kind of... This is an out-of-turn thing. It was a readied action. So I'm just kind of asking you as Apis for a general feeling. Do you want to loose an arrow after him? Shoot and miss? Act like we don't have a good shot? It'll be a tough call, Felagon, because as I described, there's the dome, and then there's like a I keep forgetting what to call it. I keep thinking of... It's a cleared path of land around the dome. And so you're standing in the entrance to the maze, and there's nothing between you and him. So it would be hard to pretend like you didn't have the shot, unless you faked stumbling over something. I wanted to make it seem like Apis misses and hits whoever comes out next. Ooh, okay. That could be very interesting. If we shoot into the dome, it would give the prisoners an arrow to do something with. That's definitely a possibility too. Shoot closer to his feet, like we're trying to hit his ankles to incapacitate him. I like that. Yeah, shoot at his feet. Yeah, a lot of people saying shoot at his feet. I like that. I think that makes sense, that you're like ready to your action. You try and shoot at him, but you fire at his feet. I'm going to roll to see if you successfully hit him. Again, with a nat 1, you're actually going to hit his feet, but on anything else, you're going to hit around his feet somewhere. Can you see that? That is a 2, a nat 2, not a nat 1. And I said on anything else, you're gonna miss. So you just miss. This is as close as, which is actually probably perfect for you, because it really does help look like you are actually aiming for his feet. You fire an arrow, and it passes between his legs. As his legs are moving, it passes between them, almost hits both feet, almost like completely kebabs both ankles together. It nicks like a slight bit of skin on the back of his Achilles heel of his right foot, and it nicks a small bit of skin on the top of his shin of the left foot as he runs. And then it's into the ground beside him as he stumbles just a touch, and then catches himself and continues to run. That's pretty good. That's a convincing attack. That was Charlie's turn. Enemy 3 is Pakrish and Zakar, who have both been told to wait here. So they use their movement to dash. Zakar runs past, picks up his javelin, and they get to the edge of the dome and look out. And then they turn and head back in. Enemy number 2 is Enola. She is going to run out after him. She sees the direction he goes, sees you fire an arrow at him, and then she runs that direction. And with her movement 60 feet, so 30 to the dome, 30 across. So she gets just to the edge of where the entrance where he left, but he's got another like 30 feet past that. And then it is the dragon who comes barreling out of the dome as well. Takes to the sky just like about 20 feet up. Smiles. And then says, "Split up!" He turns to the north and takes the entrance on the north of you. Enola's going into the entrance that Charlie actually took. You're already standing in another entrance, and the dragon is heading to the entrance to the north. So these three next to one another, he's asking you to split up and go down each one. All right. So we're out of initiative order for now, because Charlie has Longstrider on. He's already 30 feet away from her. She doesn't have ranged weapons, so he's just going to continue to gain ground on her. However, he is now in a maze, and if he takes a wrong turn, she's going to start catching up and such. So, as the dragon flew off down one of these large paths, and I should describe them for you for relevance as it comes up, the walls seem to be very thick, thicker than the walls of the dome. Probably more than 5 feet thick. You just cannot see through them at all because they just get thick with brambles after a few feet. They're also tall, very tall, at least 10 feet tall in places. Some places they're even as high as like 30 feet tall. A lot of it though is arched to a ceiling of the maze, so that they are blocked in from above as well. Not all of it. You can also see that the maze, you can hear the maze sort of tearing and moving and growing as the vines kind of adjust themselves at Lucifreak's will. The paths are usually around 10 feet wide. So it is over to you guys as a collective, again, now that we're out of initiative order per se. What do you want to do? You can see that the domes, the entrances to the dome as Lucifreak left, all closed up behind him. So getting back into the dome is not an option. You can either turn to your right, go down to the south and follow Enola into the path that she took, directly disobeying the order of Lucifreak to split up. You can turn and go back into the way that you went. You can turn and go into where Lucifreak went, or you can just kind of wait here by the dome. You can set the maze on fire. You could try that as well. Do you like to Hunter's Mark Enola? Who's up for Hunter's Marking Enola? Anyone? Let's put that as a poll. We've got a final spell slot, and before we lose sight of Enola, do we want to Hunter's Mark her? It is our last spell slot of the day. It will drop Zephyr Strike. We've already used the important thing of Zephyr Strike, so the lack of attack of opportunity doesn't really play into it anyway, so dropping it wouldn't be the biggest deal. We could track them using normal means. We are a very good tracker. We've got very good survival skills, particularly in forest. However, this is magical maze at Lucifreak's command, so it may be harder for us. Well, it will be harder for us to track in this maze. Alright, 72% of Apis saying no, we're not going to Hunter's Mark Enola. So we think about it in the moment. She disappears down into the maze. We walk over and reclaim our arrow. Did it survive being shot into the ground? It did. So we pull it out. It's still good to go. You take some of the caked on dirt off of the arrowhead. You have 3 arrows and a bow. So, what do we want to do, guys? It's over to you guys as Apis. You've got a lot of different maze options open to you. Maze entrances open to you. You can go the same one that Enola just went. Put a little distance between you and them. You can split up. You can follow Lucifreak. Bone dice. You could use your bone dice. Feels so good having our bow back even with no arrows. Yeah. Use the dirt from the arrow to wipe smudges on our cheeks. Makes them think that we're getting in the mood for a hunt. We're really buying distance between us and Charlie. Yeah. You get the dirt off and you smear it on your cheeks. Let's hunt. Can we perception check any spies or animals around? Absolutely can. Let's have a little look around us with a perception check of 5 plus 5 from perception takes it to 10 plus 3 from it being forest bonus takes it to 13. With a 13, you can see that there are animals around. There are green dragon rats sort of scurrying out of one maze looking confused and walking back in again. There are a couple of birds flying around above as well. You are by his treasure lair, so there's bound to be some animals around. I agree with Wraith. What did Wraith say? Follow the entrance Charlie used and Enola and try and track Enola while making it look like we're tracking Charlie. Alright, that is one option. I will put this to a poll. We've got a few different options coming up. So, do we want to track Enola, making it look like we're tracking Charlie? Keep in mind that goes directly against Lucifreak's order just now to split up. Do we want to track Lucifreak for any reason? Maybe we feel like we could learn more from him by being around him, or maybe we want to try our luck taking down a dragon on our own. Do we want to ask the bone dice something? Get alone and ask our bone dice a question about what we should do. Do we want to go down a different path and into the maze? Just start looking for them, seeing if we cross paths with them. Or do we want to try and scrape our way back into the dome and use this opportunity to try and kill the other two guards and start a revolution? No option to use this opportunity to run away and escape ourselves. Well, for a start, Apis wouldn't do that. So that's probably why it didn't come up as an option in my mind. But secondly, if you wanted to do that, then you would head down a separate path, because the only way to get out of here is to go down one of the paths. Alright, with 60% of the vote, Apis decides to listen to the dragon that controls their every decision. Surprisingly, not a single person voted to track Lucifreak. I mean, who knew? And so Apis turns and heads down the middle path, the one that they were on in the first place, and into the maze. I will have you make a survival check to try and keep a track of where you're going and listening out from noise and just a whole bunch of things. You turn on your Apis the Hunter brain. You are a very proficient hunter. You've hunted most of your life. But with a 3, you are clearly not feeling it today. With all of your forest bonuses and everything, that takes it to an 11. You are struggling, though. This is very clearly a magical forest, a magical maze, and so it doesn't have the same sort of natural flow as a regular forest does. You can't necessarily follow your nose because there might be a wall there. So as you walk into this maze, it is not magically quieted. It is naturally quieted by the very thick vegetation around you. It seems like it is still alive. It's still a living forest, it seems. There are still bugs under your feet. There are still the odd scuffling of tiny little mice in the undergrowth. But you walk and walk. You get to certain edges where it is a T-junction, and you have to pick one way or another. You head in the direction. You always sort of favour the direction of where Charlie was, like towards your south. Occasionally, once or twice, you will get lost or turn. Well, you'll not get lost, but you'll get turned around by the nature of coming across a dead end. And when you go back the way you came, you'll find that is also a dead end. The panic sets in just for a few seconds, thinking that you've been isolated and unable to escape. But then you'll turn back around and you'll see that the wall that was a dead end is sort of withdrawing and pulling itself back. You realise that this maze is very much a living, moving thing, and keeping a track of it as a normal maze is just never going to work. You keep pushing forwards further and further. With an 11 on survival, though, it is getting very difficult for you to keep a track of which direction you're facing, and for the most part there is a ceiling to this maze, and even in the times when that opens up into just large 30-foot tall walls instead, there is a canopy above, or there is just a very darkening twilight sky, and so you don't get the senses of like being able to direct yourself with the sun or the stars, because you can see neither right now. It takes a while. In fact, it takes, with your 11 survival, it takes about an hour or so of tracking before you hear some movement behind you of something larger than the little bugs and mice and things that you've been seeing. You turn around and you can see that it's a rat, a very large rat, one of the giant rats. However, this one does not have green scales down its snout. It looks like it does at first, but when you turn, you see that it has instead scales of a more brownish nature. It seems like it's got darker scales on it. And as it starts to approach, you can see that no, it's not scales. No, this is bark. It seems like the top of this rat is made of bark. It gets to about 30 feet from you, about 20 feet from you, and then it speaks in Sylvan. I don't know how long we've got, so I must speak fast. I don't think I'll be able to survive until morning. They are good at hunting, and around every turn there are creatures through which he can see. He says, you need to know that my test was successful. I attacked Enola today. I knew that it would be the last straw, but I also knew that it would call Luciferique from wherever he was. It was important that I catch him when he would be sleeping. I had a hunch that he sleeps through the day. A lot of the animals he breeds with are nocturnal. Sure enough, when he arrived, he was dripping with water. It confirmed a theory that I was thinking for a while. He sleeps in a lair somewhere beneath water, beneath the river. I feel like my chances are 50-50. But if I can lead you to Enola, we could attack her together. It puts you at risk. I'm not sure if you feel you are comfortable doing that. But if I was able to get through to them, by the time Luciferique goes back, having finished this hunt one way or another, Pakrish and Zakar will be dead. I was anticipating him bringing Pakrish with him on the hunt, and leaving Zakar alone. So I'm not sure exactly if the captives will follow through on our plan. You hear a little bird fly around the corner of the maze and flutter across to you, flutter across above you. It doesn't seem to stop. It just seems to keep flying past. But it has definitely seen you and this rat nearby. You want to shoot it? You can shoot it if you want to shoot the bird. That bird has seen you, and as you know now from Charlie's doings, you know that when he feels like it at any point, Luciferique can check in with all of his spies, and he can immediately download all of the information that they have seen and heard since the last time he checked in. And so next time he does that, that bird will be able to explain. Well, he will be able to know that you were talking to a giant rat that was covered in bark. Ooh, interesting. Got some dynamics in the fight here. Apis will always protect an animal in need, but is the need of this bird greater than the need of your survival with Charlie? Up to you. You can try and shoot the bird. The risk obviously being that you could miss, and then it's quite clear that you tried to shoot the bird. The benefit being if you hit, then there's no chance that that bird gets to mind warg his information to Luciferique next time Lucy checks in. It could also be Luciferique checking in on us. That is definitely an option as well. Other animals will see us kill a bird. There's nothing else around you that you can see. There may be a couple of worms and bugs, perhaps, but the information that a worm and a bug can portray to Luciferique is potentially a little less than that of a bird or a rat. We can pretend to fight the rat as the bird flies past. Do they know Charlie can shapeshift? You don't know if they know Charlie can shapeshift. We hide Charlie in the dead bat corpse. The rat is much larger than a bat. It's like a size of a dog, like maybe a terrier of some kind, this rat. The bat corpse is back on the floor of the dome. Yeah, you didn't pick it up. You threw it down to Luciferique and left. Looks like not going to shoot the bird. As the bird flies past, you think about shooting it down and then think better of it. Rat Charlie looks up and says, I don't think we'll have much time. Hopefully he's busy with the hunt and doesn't know that I can shift like this yet. I need to find a place that I can rest so that I can get my shapes back. What do you guys feel like doing? The option was presented to you that Charlie could lead you to where Enola is, and between the two of you, you could attack her on her own and try and take her out. You could try and lead her into the undead zone where there are fewer spies around because of the undead creatures in the area. Hide him in our bag. Bit too big for a bag in his current form. He could potentially shift into something smaller, but it sounds from what he just said like he's not got his wild shaping abilities yet. He needs to have a short rest to get them back. You say, as the bird's just disappearing around the other end of this particular path that you're on. Have you seen anything strange? I'm trying to hunt someone. You say it loud enough to try and hopefully make that as if you're asking the animals of the forest where to find Charlie. Help him get a rest. Go to attack Enola. There's a couple different options happening. So let's put them to a poll. Do we lead Charlie to the undead zone? Do we tell him where the zone is and let him go there on his own? Do we find Enola for a fight? Do we try and hide Charlie? Or do we ask the bone dice what the best course of action is? Or ask the bone dice if our course of action is a good idea. There's an uprising at the dome at the moment, potentially. He did say that he had planned for his hunt to be a distraction so that they can all gang up and kill Zakar, but he wasn't planning on Pakrish also being there. So there may be an uprising at the dome, there may not. It depends on how confident the people at the dome are feeling. 39% of the vote wanting to find Enola for a fight, 37% wanting to use the bone dice first, and 21% just wanting to tell him where the zone, tell him to go to the zone, tell him where the zone is. That is not a majority, but if I... Yeah, so it's just going to come down to a poll again to ask, is it find Enola or ask the bone dice first? With 79% of the vote, we're going to ask the bone dice a question first. So as the rat is saying what should we do, we stuff our hand in our bag, we pull out the nice wooden box that houses our bone dice, we get them out and we think about what we're going to ask them. I'd like to know if the revolution within the dome actually happen or will happen. Is it a good idea to kill her? If we ask them anything about fighting Enola and the spies here, we're doomed. Can we make a perception check to see if there's no spies around first? Let's do it. So as you get your dice out, you look around to see if there's any birds and bees in the trees and the 4. A 4 plus your perception check of, because it pertains to a forest, I'll allow the bonus, so takes it to a 12. 12 total perception check. You look around, you can kind of hear the buzzings of a couple of insects nearby in the hedge. With insects, they're probably not paying attention to you. You happen to know from Charlie's investigation that the birds and bees and things don't act that differently. They just live their life as they would, as animals of the forest would. And then he checks in periodically to download anything that they've seen or heard. So if the insects in the trees wouldn't be paying attention to you, then he won't learn anything from them. You don't see, with a 12 perception, you don't see any big animals like rats, mice, squirrels, snakes, birds. Alright, so let's see, what are we going to ask them? We could say it in Dwarvish. No, the wildlife spies can't rat us out. Pun intended. Nice, good job. Yeah, cool, we will ask the question in Dwarvish when we ask the question. Alright, so far I have, can we take Enola? Will the captives be successful in their revolt? Can Charlie survive on his own? Will the army arrive tonight? With 59% of the vote, Apis decides to ask the dice something along the lines of, will the captives be successful in their revolution tonight in killing both Pakrish and Zakar? What exactly is the wording that we use? You're the ones asking the question. You get to decide as Apis what is the wording. Will they be successful in their attack of Pakrish and Zakar? Will they be able to incapacitate them? Will they be able to kill them? What are we asking? Will Pakrish and Zakar survive the night? That could be an interesting question. Nice and straightforward, simple, less stuff to confuse things with. Will Pakrish and Zakar both survive the night? Or just will they survive the night, and then if we get weal and woe as like a mixture, then we know that one of them will and one of them won't. Will the people in the dome be successful tonight? Means they ultimately prevail whether they kill them or not. We need a lawyer for these dice questions. Yeah, seems like it. Will we survive the night? I think I like that one. Put your thumbs up in the chat if will Pakrish and Zakar survive the night. Most people saying yes. This is a definite majority in the chat here who are wanting to ask in Dwarvish. Will Pakrish and Zakar survive the night? And then you roll the dice. As you take out your bone dice in this little hedge maze clearing designed by Lord Luciferic himself, standing beside your ally and companion, Charlie, a half-elf druid who is currently taking the form of a giant rat with bark-like skin. You roll the dice on a nearby relatively flat section of stone, and with every clatter you get a different flash of a sense. Sight, sound, hearing, sound and hearing as different. Different smells, tastes, textures. They all flash into your mind in an overwhelming and rapid sequence of negativity. You get a baby crying, and the sight of a rotting animal being pecked at by vultures. You get a horrible screeching sound and a terrible cold shiver, the smell of rotting meat, and just general horrendous and awful sights and sounds and smells and sensations. And you're left with a feeling of woe. Make of that what you will, as you pick up the dice and put them back in your wooden box. You can ask the dice another question, but given that you have asked them once today, there is a slight chance that they give you a random answer. The question was worded as, will they survive the night? So, what now? Tell Charlie. We turn to Charlie and say, in Sylvan, I just asked the dice whether your plan at the dome will be successful, and I got a feeling that it will. And he responds, then let's go find Enola. And it's over to you guys as to whether or not to do that. Charlie is keen to find Enola and end this Dragonborn scourge, but by doing so, will you be pissing off the dragon? Do you care about that anymore? Will you be showing that you will not bow the knee to this dragon? You may still be able to, even after killing Enola, you may still be able to deceive your way out of it, to say that you weren't responsible and that it was Charlie's doing. He's going to be pissed anyway, so let's kill his enforcer. How much damage can we do with 3 arrows and a bow tusk? Possibly enough. Burn the corpse after we kill her completely so we can blame someone else, maybe Charlie. Alright, give me a quick thumbs up or thumbs down in the chat to see if I even need the poll. Go after Enola now? Yes or no? Alright, with only one person coming in with a no, that is an overwhelming yes. We are going to go after Enola. We're going to take the fight to her. So the question is, do we do so? Do we try and find her, or do we set up a trail? Do we set something up as if we have found Charlie and we chase him to the dead zone, hoping that she comes with? And then we are in the dead zone with fewer spies around, but the danger of undead creatures around as well. Round 3, fight! Finish her! What do you guys feel? Are we just going to get to her and ambush, or are we going to get Charlie to transform back into himself and run, and we give chase? Thankfully, Sparrow, we went west when I rolled randomly to see which direction he ran. He ran west, so we're actually not far from the dead zone at all, as far as we know anyway. We did go west, but then we've been turned around quite a lot from this maze. So we would have to try and find our way to going west again, which would require a much better survival check than we made before. Lead her to the dead zone, kill her, a little gift for the necromancer. Can we let Charlie rest first? Potentially. The longer we stay here to rest, the more chance that Luciferique or Enola comes across us, though. Let's plan out our attack in about an hour's worth of time, so that we don't have to actually attack it today. I can't get a consensus from the chat. What do we want to do, guys? What's the plan? If we kill her in the undead zone, do we have to worry about her coming back as an undead? Potentially. There is a necromancer around who is potentially responsible for the undead, or maybe the animals that die there just automatically get raised. We don't know. We didn't ask, and he told us to get away. Won't this freak already be here if he wanted to? He can manipulate the maze and see us. He can see us through his spies if and when he chooses to check in with them. Primeval Awareness. We could use our last spell slot of the day to use Primeval Awareness to see where the undead are and sense them in that direction and go in that direction. What's the worst that can happen? Dead zone, baby! Alright, let's put it to a poll. Poll deciding what to do. We get ourselves looking beaten up, and Charlie drags us to her, and then happens to cross paths with her and goes, oh god, and he's like, oh shit, I just beat up one of them, now I've got to beat up the other one as well. And then just as she starts to attack him, he fights back, we jump up, psych, we weren't attacked at all, we both double team her. The next option is, do we chase Charlie to the undead? Do we cause a big commotion, attract her attention? The downside of that is Luciferique might actually hear as well and also come. We say, this way, I've found him, this way, and we chase him to the undead. When we get into the area where there's definitely no spies around, we turn around and attack her. Do we just rest here first so that he can get some of his hit points and wild shape back? Do we find her as if we're going to strategize? We say, hey Nola, I've got an idea, we've got a plan. Come with me, and then we strategize with her, and we say if we set a trap for him just over this way and try and lure her away with strategy, and then we attack with him. Or do we track him to the undead, give him a head start, tell him where the undead zone is, and then we track him and leave a big clear track of our own, rustling leaves and stamping in the mud, and hope that Enola comes by these tracks and goes, ooh, this way, and then follows us to the zone. It's a little bit more believable that when she comes across those tracks, but we're leaving it to chance that she even comes across them. And don't forget, there's a dragon in the area who's also hunting. With 47% of the vote, track Charlie to the undead. So that is not a majority, not a clear majority, so we're going to go to preferential voting. If I lost the bottom two options, drag us to her would still not be able to win, so I'm going to drop the bottom three options and revote for track Charlie or find her to strategize. The undead zone might kill him. That is a good point. It is a dangerous area because of undead. It's just not as dangerous because of the spice. You're out of the frying pan into the fire, as it says. I don't want the undead zone because that deer could have killed us. It's not a safe haven. Yeah. It's safe in terms of no spies. It's not safe in terms of wandering undead. If you're smart in your strategy during a fight, you could potentially use the undead to your advantage, because they seem to attack anything and everything that's whatever's closest to them. So you could try and push Enola into the undead or whatever and hope that the undead kill her, because then you can even better say, look, I wasn't involved. Enola just got killed by the undead or something. Alright, with 64% of the vote, we decided to track him to the undead zone. So we tell him in Sylvan about the location of the necromancers nearby. I went to speak with him. He's dangerous. I'm going to roll a percentage real quick. Okay. Look, the necromancer's nearby. He's dangerous, and this is what we've learned. It's a dangerous place to be, but the existence of the undead means that Luciferic spies are practically non-existent there. All of the rats and life of the forest have been killed by the undead animals. So you need to, so if you head that direction to the west of here, I can't remember exactly which direction's west. But if you head to the west, you'll eventually start to come across less and less spies. I'm going to give you some head start, then I'll track you, and then I'll leave a big clear trail for Enola to follow, and hopefully we can lure her into the undead zone where there's no spies, and then we can attack her without me giving away the fact that I'm working against him. Then I'm going to roll a survival check for you to see if you can redetermine which direction you're facing. 2 again. So a 2 plus your survival of 8, because you're in a forest, takes you to a 10. Unfortunately, you just have no idea. You would have to... you don't have no idea. West is kind of like one of that direction. It could be that way, anywhere around to that way. You're like, I don't know exactly which direction west is because I've been turned around by this maze. You can, however, eventually climb a tree to find out, but you're going to need to send Charlie off. He just at this moment you see another little bird come flying around the corner and sort of alight in one of the branches of the hedge sticking out. About 40 feet back, and at that point he just like sets off scampering away from you and away from the bird, and just takes off. You look around, you see the bird lying there. You bend down and start retying your boots, and then you get ready to start tracking whenever you can. You give him a few minutes to move, and then you set off in the direction that he ran, looking around the whole time for eventually the maze lid, as it were, the maze ceiling to give way to large walls. Eventually, you come across a... How long does it take? Let's see. Takes you best part of an hour to eventually get a place where you can climb the walls. You try and climb the walls in a few different areas, and it's just scratching the hell out of you with brambles and barbs and stuff, and you realise that you're going to take some damage if you continue to climb at that point. So you keep walking and climbing with your 2 on survival, even with a 10. It takes you a while to find a decent place. Eventually, however, you find an area where you can climb a tree that is within the maze walls and not actually a part of the maze walls. And doing so, you get to the top. It is now nighttime. Twilight has finished, and you can look around and get your bearings with the stars as to which direction you're heading. And you find that you are in the northwest of the dome. You definitely headed much more north than you thought you were. But eventually you find your bearings. Okay, there we go. And you clamber on back down the tree. And hoping that Charlie has done the same, being a druid, he hopefully has been able to suss out which direction west was. You set off west as well, leaving behind yourself a rather large trail as best you can. I'm going to roll to see now whether Enola can find you. Interestingly, what's the chances of this? Okay. And what's the chances? Okay. And then one last one. It's cocked. Okay. As you walk, you see a little what would it be? Probably a bird of some kind, a wood pigeon. Wood pigeon comes swooping out from one of the sort of crossroads of this maze, and then as it turns, it seems to pass you and then turn back and loop back round, fly back to where you were and land in front of you. And then it looks up and grows much larger very quickly as green scales emerge from its feathers, until it's taking up the majority of this crossroads, and Luciferique is in front of you and says, "Not having much luck." What do you say? You say, "We're tracking him. We're tracking him now. I'm pretty sure I've got his scent." He says, "Yes, me too. He's getting a little close to the area that I don't like to go. It's almost as if he knew." He's very intelligent. We haven't had much luck tracking him yet. I think I've got a bit of a trail though. This maze is very disorienting. I'm sorry, I'm not much used to forests changing so much. Yes, it can be rather delightfully distracting. I'm not used to chasing druids. I didn't realize he could shift. Do you want to make out like you didn't know that he can shapeshift? Or do you want to be like, "Oh yeah, he can shift. I thought you knew." A lot of people say no lying, but no comment. Just say, "Oh yeah. Repeat what he said as a question. "I didn't know he could shift." And you say, "You didn't know he could shift?" And he says, "No, but it does make the hunt a little more interesting. Mind you, if his freedom is earned by walking into the dead forest, not much of a freedom." Did he know about the place you don't like to go? Perhaps he must have. Besides, what happened with that earlier today? I saw you had a little intriguing encounter with one of the undead. I'm sorry that my children attacked you. You must know that I had no control over them at that time. Do you want me to continue to track him here? It wasn't a very pleasant experience, no? No. It seems my enemy in that part of the woods has an ability to control my children, or some of them. I'm sorry to hear that. Tell him everything other than trying to enlist the help of the necromancer. So what happened after I lost sight of you? Did you find any more of them? Should we have to go attack his enemy with him now? That could work. I ran into the deer, and then your children came for me. They were indifferent when I said that I was with you. They attacked me nonetheless. Yes, well that's because they were working for him. I've been to that zone that you don't like to go before. If Charlie's there, I can go in and find him. You can head back south. Perhaps. I think I should send Enola with you. Just to be safe, of course. As he says this, the wall beside you, on the crossroads, the wall beside you opens up, and the crossroads to his left closes. You can see past that into the next one over, and you can see that the wall as it opened was about 10 feet thick. It opened up, and then you can see into the path beside that,
just on from that, another wall opens, and another wall, and another wall, and they are opening in a particular line on like an oblique angle from where you are. Eventually, after about 6 of these walls opening, the 7th opens, and behind it, Enola turns with a pike in hand, ready at the movement of the wall. She sees you through all of these walls, and then a bird flies past through where she was standing, and sort of flutters above her, and she continues out of that path in your direction. See, that's a pretty sweet trick. Is there any chance you can teach me that one day? He says, "Not unless you're a dragon, I'm afraid." This maze is crazy. Remind me to never make you mad. I don't want to be hunted. No, I imagine you don't. Although I think you'd make a good hunt. You have certain skills. You say, oh shit, she was way off, wasn't she? She was getting closer. Can you clear the path towards the zone? He says, well, that would spoil the hunt, wouldn't it? That'd be cheating. You were tracking him fine. Continue your journey. I'm going to loop around, see if he comes out the other side. The skylight opens, and he just up and out into the night air, and then it closes behind you, and the walls behind Enola as she walks closes one at a time until she's standing. What was that? What did he want? What do you say to her? You are alone in a crossroads with Enola. I wouldn't discount the idea that he already knows of our betrayal and is setting us up here. It's very possible with this guy. He wants you with me. We're heading to the Dead Forest. Why? She says. I'll have you make an insight check. Insight of 6. You guys want to jail this one, eh? It's just not rolling well for us today. Let me put that one out of the dice tray in jail, and we'll use this sparkly green one instead. With a 6 plus 2 wisdom insight, you get an 8. You don't read anything on her face. It's relatively dark. You're relying on your dark vision for the most part, and you can see that she sort of looked around, but with her draconic face, hard to read expression. He thinks Charlie's heading into the dead zone, and he wants us to go in and hunt. Okay. You know which way it is? Aye, I do. Cool. Let me have a survival check from you. 19. Finally, good on survival. Plus 8, 27. With a 27 survival, you are able to keep a track of which direction is west and head in that direction. You don't have Charlie's path anymore because you're no longer on the same path that Charlie ran. But you definitely can find your own way to the dead zone and then hope to find him once you get there. It is not too long, only like 20 minutes or so, before eventually the hedge maze that you're walking through begins to thin, both in the size of the walls and the frequency of the walls. You're starting to enter more clearings with only a couple of paths to choose from, like large rooms almost of this maze. You continue on in that direction towards the west. No longer has it got a roof to this maze. No longer are the walls 30 feet high. They're now like 10 feet at most. The average is about 10 feet. Some of the walls are even down as low as like 7 feet tall. And they are guiding in big sweeping paths rather than lots of sharp turns and twists and T-junctions and crossroads. The walls around you are no longer moving either. You can tell that the paths that you're leading are virtually stationary, and you realise that Lucifreak has less and less command over this part of the forest as it gets further and further from his lair. Eventually, the walls seem to die out entirely, and you are left with regular forest, trees and undergrowth and bushes, lots of which are in the process of dying. Not a lot of them are like rotten, but a lot of them are in the process of dying, being a an outlander and a ranger, you would know that obviously if the undead are killing every animal in this area, birds and insects and rodents and things, there are no pollinators anymore. And so a lot of these trees are just not maintaining their health anymore. Funguses and mosses and things are growing on them that would normally be eaten by bugs and insects and what have you. You realize that you are definitively in the undead zone, but there is no Charlie around that you can see. This is a large section of forest. It may take some time to find him. I'll continue that 27 survival check, though, into this next portion. You say, we're almost there. Stay alert. There's a rather aggressive deer I ran into earlier, and a few hostile bats at the very least. I suggest we go cautiously here. I know there's at least an undead deer. Be on your guard. The creatures here will attack you mindlessly. She takes a defensive stance with her pike in hand, and you can tell that this lady is well trained. It's been long enough now with you walking beside her, sort of leading her to the undead zone, that I can warrant another insight check. 9 plus your 2 insight, 11. You can tell that she is a little scared, and from that you can also tell that the reason for it is that she stumbles a lot more than you. It occurs to you just now that it is not normally her shift at this time of night. You have probably hunted past the end of her shift, which means past the end of her dark vision potion, and she is having a harder time seeing in the night. With you no longer being inside a canopied maze, you are inside the regular section of forest, and so she still has got the nighttime sky. And if I check my timetable really quick, what time of the month is it, as it were? You don't know, but it is pretty close to a full moon. You would know then. Actually, let me get another survival check from you. This one does not pertain to forests, so you don't get your forest bonus. However, a 13 plus 5 is an 18. With an 18, you can see the moon. It looks like it is maybe 1 to 3 days away from a full moon. And you would know that your birthday is on the 17th, which is the full moon. So it is either the 14th, 15th, or 16th currently, and your birthday is coming up. With it being approaching a full moon, though, it is very bright out, and with that, the darkness around is essentially dim light. When you're in the shade of trees, it becomes darkness, and she has a harder time seeing. But when she's out from under the shade of the trees, she can still sort of make do with her eyes. So. Where was I? Oh, you were tracking Charlie. So with the 27 survival check before to find your way into this part of the forest, it takes you, let's see, how long is it going to take to find Charlie? He made it here relatively easily. It took you an hour to get here, though. Has he had trouble? That means he's actually had time to have a short rest because he's been waiting for you. Alright, percentage check to see if he was attacked while he was waiting for you, because there's just random stuff here. That is not an attack for him, thankfully. So then he's just been waiting for you. How long is it going to take you to find him? Let me roll my D60 to see how many minutes it'll take you to find him. 15. It takes you about 15 minutes of tracking before eventually you pick up on tracks that are quite obvious. So obvious that an animal wouldn't have left them. You know, because they are right through sort of the middle of a clearing, and you know that animals, particularly the rat that seems to have left this, animals tend to stick to their natural instinct, has them sticking to trees and cover and things that they can like dart under, especially prey animals like rats. And so you you see that these giant rat prints are very much through the centre of this clearing, and not only that, but they sort of curl back round in like big sort of loops, making it very clear that that he's been kind of going around and around in this space. Not inside of a meandering zombie kind of a way. Even the deer that you were tracking for a good hour the other day was walking in. He was walking according to the natural sort of instincts of a deer. He just happened to be a dead one. You pick up on that, and then you see where the rat sort of heads off. And then, being a good outlander, you can tell that the area you're approaching would be a pretty good place for an ambush. Enola, do you have any more arrows on you? If things go sideways, 3 might not be enough. She does not answer that. She says, Luciferic has led us to believe that your skill with an arrow knows no bound. I'm sure 3 will be plenty. So, you fairly confident that the rat tracks you're following are very fresh within the last couple of minutes, and that you're approaching an area that would be a pretty good place for an ambush. What do you want to do? You need to step away from Enola so we don't have disadvantage to attack her. Okay, how are you going to do that without raising suspicion? She seems to be following you pretty closely on your shoulder. Not least because she doesn't see very well. We draw an arrow out and notch it. Yeah, knock it. She sees us doing that and says, are we close? Is he here? What tracks is she following? She's just following you. Lead her right into it and wait for Charlie to attack. Listen, I'm pretty sure we're close. Stand back and follow behind me. Ready in action, and the action is ready to shoot her when Charlie springs the attack. Is that the idea? Move further than 10 feet away from her, tell her to stop so you can track better. Say, shh, 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 stop here. I can hear him. Come behind me about 10 feet or so. I can track better. Alright, I'm going to roll an insight check for her. I'm going to roll a deception check for you. 4. It's not your day today. 4 plus your deception of 1 is a 5. She says, wait. Why do you want me behind you? And then she pulls her pike out into a ready stance. She says, I swear if this is an ambush, you will not live to see the morning. There is a rustling of the bush nearby. And Charlie's voice says, well then we better do it right. And as he goes to cast a spell and you spin around to loose your arrow, we will leave it there and pick up here next time. Thank you very much for joining me. This has been a fun one, and I can't wait to see how the fight with Enola goes. Bye-bye!
Did you know that this whole campaign is run live on my Twitch channel with the people in chat controlling the actions of Apis Hive? Well, it's free to go and make an account and join in over on Twitch.